Hey, welcome back to another session of the Growth and Scaling Roundtable. We've got some amazing guests in the green room, standing by, waiting to talk to all of you.
In today's world, there's more and more opportunity to have a hybrid in between both of those.
Your job isn't to get into the industry to get rich. Your job is to get into the industry to support and provide the best service you can.
Listen, discover, explore. I mean, it's exactly what I tell the brands that we open retail stores for, right?
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Growth and Scaling Roundtable. Today, I am so excited because we're talking about all the good stuff. Why do you feel overwhelmed when you're running a business? Well, it oftentimes has to do with the fact that you don't know what to do next. And feeling overwhelmed is so common. It is so normal. For those of you that are operating your own business, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And trying to grow and scale a business while you're feeling overwhelmed is overwhelming. So today I have a special guest who I'm bringing on to talk with me about what people can do to kind of displace the overwhelm and replace it with a strategy, with a game plan, and how to feel really confident moving into growing and scaling your business. So first I want to introduce our guest today. His name is David Weaver. David, tell us who you are and what do you do?
Hey, Todd, thanks for having me. Hello, everybody. So my name is David, and I'm a high-performance coach. I work with business owners, and I help them with a bunch of things, but really the biggest thing is to help them really create a business and a life that they actually love, that they actually look forward to, that's not overwhelming and stressful and anxiety-producing, and that actually, matters to them. So that's what I do, and I'm also a dad and husband and avid adventurer.
I love it. And Dave and I have got to know each other over the past few weeks because we are very aligned in the way we like to help people. We're very aligned in the way that we feel about this topic today in particular. And so Dave, give us a lowdown. What is, as a high performance coach, as someone who helps people with their personal growth along with their business growth, how do you see that intertwined and what do you kind of see as the core crux of the problem?
Ooh, well, that's a deep question, but I mean, I think that you can't unwind it, right? If you're a business owner and your personal life, it's all intertwined together. So like
Right.
if you're stressed out at work, the chances of that showing up in your personal life with your family, with your friends or whatever is very high. So kind
Right.
of at the core of that and the work that I do with people, it all really comes all the way back to your identity, right? And that's like the base of everything. If you let's just say that you have an identity or belief that I am an anxious person, which people do, right? You might I'm sure you've heard somebody say that, like, oh, I'm just an anxious person. I'm stressed out a lot of the time.
Right.
It's going to be really hard to change if you don't address that identity first. You're going to feel overwhelmed and stressed all the time because you actually identify as being that type of person.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, getting back to the root of things, it is really those types of things that are the starting place to then unlock this, how do we get rid of overwhelm and all those other things?
Right. Well, I appreciate you saying that because, when I was thinking about this topic and how I wanted to dive into it today, I think that there's 3 keys to eliminating overwhelm in your business. And it definitely relates back to your own personal life as well, because to your point, they're very intertwined. It's hard to pull them apart completely. And oftentimes when a business owner leaves their business, sometimes that remnant of you still resides in the business and it stays there forever, indefinitely. But let's talk about this. Overwhelm to me and eliminating the overwhelm comes down to 3 things. First of all, a guidance system, which I think is what you're implying. It's a very personal thing. We're talking mission, vision, values, that kind of stuff. Second thing is an exit analysis. How do you foresee yourself exiting this business, because sometimes we look at our own business, even our own business, and think, holy crap, this is a hole I'm never getting out of. Like, I'm going to be here forever doing this thing. And sometimes that makes us feel flustered and anxious. Last thing is that burnout transition. How do we eliminate the products that are wasting our time, wasting our employees' time, that really don't add enough value to our final product that it's worth holding on to? So let's take this one at a time. You know, Dave, I know that you in particular are a specialist in dealing with these key components of mission, vision, values, kind of that character or those core value traits that you were kind of inferring there in your description of overwhelm. Take it home, man. What are we doing there?
Yeah, so I think it can be really interesting, right? Because we do have these two elements, and they don't necessarily have to be the same. And but it is important to understand them both. So, like,
Right.
for example, if you have your company's values, which, by the way, a lot of people don't have defined or not
True.
defined well.
True.
So I'd love to hear more about how you help people with that piece. But if your own personal values don't have some overlap with the business, I think it's
Right.
going to be harder to execute well.
Yeah.
So first of all, just like figuring out, like, what is important to me, what are my values, and then, you know, what are the company values, and then how do those things feed each other?
Right.
Because then you move from a lot of, you know, I like to think of motivation as a very extrinsic thing. Like,
Right.
motivation
Right.
comes and goes. We have it sometimes we don't. But the more powerful type of energy is intrinsic
Yeah.
inspiration. I call it inspiration, like totally intrinsic.
Yeah.
And so when those things are synergistic with each other, you're much more likely to have that intrinsic inspiration to be able to just go.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And I feel like that alignment is what makes it achievable. And I think that if you're disaligned or misaligned, it just can't work. And so one of the things that you know, since you asked, let me tell you how
Yeah.
I see it. I kind of see these three things working together like this. First, there's a vision. The vision is, where do you want to take your business? Where do you visualize that long-term objective of what the problem you're trying to solve, or whatever it is? The vision is that long-term thing you want to reach for. I think of missions as very practical, very specific things. So, for example, right now I have a mission in my company. We're trying to host a growth readiness workshop. And the growth readiness workshop is important to me. It's not my vision. It's not like all that stuff, but like, I have a very specific mission that I have my team set on to say, okay, if we want to have 30 people at this next growth readiness workshop, we need to have this many assessments, this many that, and this many calls to get 30 people to this thing. That is our mission right now. A lot of people think a mission is a very broad, ambiguous thing. I love missions that are like, I know how to get there. I'm going to do this. I'm going to hit it. And then my core values or characteristics, like, what do we need to take on ourselves as a company to achieve that mission? Well, we should probably be talking about growth readiness all the time, right? Or we should probably be encouraging people to take our assessment that's free. We should probably be doing all these things, right? And so I look at these things like that. Like, there's a vision that I want to take people to, that we solve this problem. And then there's specific missions. And sometimes we have more than one mission, depending on the team that I'm working with within my company. And then there's these key characteristic traits that we need to embody to enable us to achieve those missions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And I don't know if you've heard this before. I learned this from one of my friends, and I love this term, but he uses the term an ever expanding inspired vision.
Yeah.
And what I love about that is, like, I think sometimes we set goals,
Yeah.
and then what happens? We maybe achieve them, but
Right.
more likely we don't achieve them.
Right.
And then we create this like cycle of guilt and like, oh, but I'm not good enough and blah, 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 all this baggage that comes with it. Whereas, like, in reality, we don't necessarily know the timelines for a lot of things.
Right.
And we're going to change as humans.
And
our businesses are going to evolve, and they're going to change. And, like, I know one of the things we're going to talk about in the future here is that, what products that we used to use don't work anymore and it doesn't make sense to keep them. But I love that idea because I think it creates more freedom. And
Yeah.
I'm all about that is like, okay, an ever expanding vision means I get to go look at that and say, hey, what doesn't line up with my values anymore?
Right.
And what does? And how would I change that? And how can I create this to be even better as I grow as a person, as our business grows? And I think that having just a static thing that never changes when it comes to that can be tough.
It's very tough, and it does. That's why I look at as a mission as something that's actionable, something
Mhm.
that has a deadline. If I can't do this by then, I change my mission, right? Like
Mm.
I'm going to modify the mission to fit what I think I can hit. And to your point, as things evolve, both in your business and your person, and you may have all of a sudden a new baby join the family, and all of a sudden like things are different, or you get married, or some big life event. Missions can change, and it's okay for a mission to change because you don't know what those outside variables are. But your vision, I feel like that is something that's like, I still want to solve this problem, but the way I'm going to do it is going to change right now. And so we're going to modify the mission to fit what we can actually accomplish and have a deadline and kind of nail it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's how I
absolutely.
see it. But
Yeah.
I actually had a panel discussion on this a couple months ago with 3 other people, and all 3 of us saw it very differently. And it was very fun. It was a very lively conversation because everyone's like, "Nah, I don't see it that way." But when it comes to overwhelm, and it comes to solving the problem of overwhelm in your business, I truly feel like, I know you feel, that when you're clear on your mission or your vision or however you want to call it, it eliminates the thought of the unknown of what am I actually doing this for?
Yeah.
Right. Can you talk to that for a minute? Because I think that's a big problem people have.
Yeah. Yeah. What am I actually doing this for? Man, I think so many times we just get going and we like have this idea, we have this thing and we get going. And then now all of a sudden we're down the road a ways. And this happens all the time because I force people to slow down when I start working with them. I'm like, hold on. What are you actually doing this for? Why does this matter? And like, what is the purpose? And I think, getting grounded in that then also helps solve the overwhelm. Because if you feel kind of hopeless or like I'm stuck in this cycle of putting out fires and busyness and I'm not sure where this is going,
Totally.
that's really a hard place to live.
Totally agree. Totally agree. And so as we think of that, now let's move on to the next step, because you just kind of segued really, really well into an exit analysis or an exit strategy. However you want to think about this. I can't tell you how many business owners I've talked to who, when we talk about a potential exit and an exit strategy, they really are, they look at me with a blank face and they say, well, this is my baby. I'm not leaving my baby,
Mm-hmm.
and it's as if this company is almost more important to them than their family, because it is in some cases, and it shouldn't be. I've been very guilty of falling into the trap of thinking of my business this way. And I over the last 15 years, I haven't at all. But I remember this first business that I had out of college. We grew it, we nurtured it, we developed it. It was just such an awesome business. I couldn't picture the exit. And as I started to work with my business partner on a possible exit, it was still so new and fresh. We didn't know we thought there was only one way to leave a business, and that was to sell it. And what we discovered was that actually we can actually do a seller financing with each other. We kind of did this unique buyout structure that he and I, he bought me out of the business and I went on and did something different. And it ended up being a great thing. But we didn't know at the start. Had we known to what end we were wanting to exit the business, I think we would have had a much clearer, less complicated time trying to resolve how we were going to exit when we did. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and then that gave you all the clarity, right? So
Totally.
like thinking about where you're headed. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of times we don't think about it, but I will say I don't inject what I think anybody should do. It was like,
Yeah.
if they don't want to exit their business, or if they think that their business is actually more important than their family,
Right.
that's their values right now. And that is the reality. And actually, like, people, it will be hard for them to say that out loud.
Right.
But that might actually really be true. And there is this trajectory, which I'm sure you've seen, especially as a male. Like,
Right.
in your 20s, you're like, I'm out to prove something. I want to show my worth and my value. And like, I got this thing and it's my baby. And you go through this like cycle. And so one of the things that I do with people is we do like a core purpose statement.
Right.
And like,
Right.
like things like, what do you want people to say about you at your funeral?
Right.
Which forces you to then actually say, okay, do I want them to say like, man, he worked a lot, he made so much money, it was awesome? Or do I want them to say like, oh, he was the best dad, or whatever, right? And so I do see that there's these periods of time where work does become very, very important to people for a while, and sometimes seemingly way out of balance. But
Yeah.
I think over the trajectory of like the course of working, people kind of come back around to that. And I'm sure you've heard, well, maybe you haven't heard of this book, but Bronnie Ware, she wrote this book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And the number one regret, so she's a palliative nurse, so she worked with people at the end of their life,
Right.
and interviewed them, and like the number one regret was, people said, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself and not what others expected of me.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I think that kind of all ties into like, you know, having a
and business. Yeah.
what is actually important, and then what is your exit strategy. And if you love your work and you want to keep doing what you're doing, like a couple days of work week until your 70s, like, awesome. But think about, I think where you come in is super valuable, is like, here are all the options that are available to you, and deciding kind of which direction you want to go,
Right.
then can help eliminate a lot of that overwhelm, because now you're like, this is the plan, this is where I'm headed.
Totally. I totally agree. And when people talk about overwhelm and they talk about my business is driving me crazy, a lot of employees don't understand that. They don't see that, like, what do you mean? This is a really cool job. But to a founder, it gets overwhelming when you don't know, how do I get out of this thing? Because for an employee, it's real easy. They just go to Indeed or they go to LinkedIn, they find another job. For a business owner, it's a much more complicated thing. And I think a lot of the other overwhelm that people don't understand is the overwhelm of feeling like my decisions right now affect every person that works in my organization. And if I do this thing wrong or I screw this thing up, it affects everybody. And that's a huge, huge overwhelming feeling. It's a big burden that we carry as business owners. And so I think going back to just recapping the first couple of things we've talked about here, you know, knowing the mission, vision, and the core values you want to implement within your culture, within your brand, within your company, makes a difference. It aligns the right people to do the right things at the right times within your company. Second thing is knowing your exit, and having an exit strategy kind of helps you identify the path out and how are you getting out of this business, and to what end are you building the business. And then lastly, I want to talk about burnout transition. And this is kind of a unique thing, I think, to me. I don't know if you've ever heard this term before.
No. In fact, I thought it meant something different when you first said it.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what I mean by burnout transition. I've started several companies, and I've also coached a lot of people through starting their company. And what I've found is that when you're launching a business, oftentimes, you know, and just picture in your head for a second, an Elon Musk rocket, right? Like this thing is like taking off, and there's all this thrust coming out. That's a business launch to me. Lots of thrust, lots of ideas, lots of just fluff flowing out of your business ideation, because nobody knows exactly what they're doing until they start doing it. You modify, you tweak, and then you launch. Business is the same way. And I see a lot of people start a business, and even 2 months, 2 years, 10 years later, they're still holding on to some of the product that they initially launched with that really isn't all that practical, profitable, or easy to fulfill.
Hmm.
Me personally, I've started a lot of businesses where my initial product that I went out to fulfill was a freaking nightmare. Like, it was so much fulfillment that I had to modify and simplify to be able to fulfill it for multiple people at the same time. And that to me was a huge awakening, because I was like, oh man, I thought I was going to be doing this huge thing, and all people really want is this really simple thing. And I can do that over and over and over again and not do this big, huge thing I thought I had to do. So I call it the burnout, this burnout analysis or burnout transition, because as you evolve in your business, the overwhelm sometimes come of, oh crap, I got to keep fulfilling this thing that I started with when I actually don't even like doing that anymore. I prefer to do this thing. And for some reason, we feel like all of our clients are going to leave us if we stop doing this one thing we started with, when in actuality, you might have 300 clients that are doing something totally different and 20 clients doing the original thing. And you just feel like, I can't let these 20 people down for the sake of the, you know what I mean? If you got 300 that are buying this other thing up all day long. So Dave, that's a big point to me of eliminating overwhelm, is discovering which products can you transition out of into the thing that you actually do really, really well. It's a core competency of your business that people are really coming to you about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So now I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong here, that as people do that, one of the challenges is that now they have to let go of something.
Yeah.
And they have to step into a new role. And I imagine that you see people and that is difficult for them. Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they feel like everybody's going to run away from them if they change what that thing is that they do.
Totally. So this is where I think it's a really useful skill to know how to let go of identities and create new identities. So like if you're going from this like operator in this specialized thing that you're really good at and you loved when you started your business, to now managing a team, and then now you're managing a leadership team who's managing the team, and like it requires seeing yourself in a new way and seeing a new identity for yourself and being able to do that, because if you don't, then you're going to be constantly hit with self-sabotage and like, who am I to be in this position? And I can't
100%.
do that. And then you're handicapping the business growth on top of that, and beating yourself up and stressed out and overwhelmed, and then showing up terrible when you get home. It's like a vicious
it is
downward cycle.
And to your point, I like how you brought that into an identity thing, because, I feel like it's like an owner identity problem. It's also a business identity problem. Like, I mean, look at Netflix. Netflix must have thought at some point, man, we're sending all these discs to people. We're sending all these DVDs to people. This is what they know us as. This is what they really are depending on us for, is to send them a DVD. But what happened?
They went away.
They went away. They transitioned to what the customer actually wanted. I mean, I got to think that the simplification for them of going from having to send a DVD to every single living human on the continent of America to a streaming platform is such an easier fulfillment, right?
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah.
But there was probably people in the company that said, we can't stop sending DVDs. Like, we just can't do this,
Yeah.
And so I think that, to your point, like, it's an identity problem. It's understanding. And I think it all boils down to, when you're clear on the mission that you're solving. For Netflix, they wanted to deliver entertainment to people as easy and simple as possible. They didn't change their vision of what they wanted to do. They changed the delivery mechanism, but they didn't change their mission or the vision. The mission of how they did it changed. Their values, I think, stayed the same, but there's just all these things that kind of evolve that are, a part of this overwhelm thing. I got to think that when Netflix said, holy crap, like 90% of our customers are streaming, not ordering discs anymore. that had to feel really good to say, dude, let's kill it. Let's kill the DVD delivery and go to this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Clarity, and they could execute much better. So, Dave, how do you help people get that clarity and eliminate the overwhelm, given what we just talked about today?
Yeah. So, like, one last thing before I answer that question, but there's this piece of that I see all the time, and I want to bring it up because I see it a lot, which is this limiting belief around I have to work harder to be valuable.
Right.
So, like, we're very addicted, and like my parents' generation.
Yeah.
Aging myself a little here, but that was true. Like, the harder you worked, the more money you make.
100%.
But now it is completely different. And I think decoupling that allows us to get rid of a lot of overwhelm when we can remove ourselves from the fact that, like, oh, it's if I'm not putting out fires and being crazy busy all day, that doesn't mean I'm being less valuable. That actually probably means you're being much more intentional about how you're setting up your life.
I love it. I love it.
So, I mean, I guess I'm kind of answering your question in regards to that, but
you totally did. Yeah.
Yeah. It comes down to a number of things, right? It's like lining up your own core values, your own purpose statement, your own things that really matter to you, and then your business stuff, having that all lined up and clarity about those things together. And then your relationship to everything that's happening. There's this other great saying, like, you get to create how you relate to everything in your life.
Yeah.
So if you see email as overwhelming, never ending, I can't get on top, this sucks.
Right.
That's how email is for you. But you could also have a different perspective, which is like, wow, my email inbox is always full because my business is thriving. I have a lot of people that need my help. How cool is this? I'm never going to get on top. That's great. That's fine. Right? It's the same exact circumstance, but you're changing how you perceive it. And so that's a lot of where our overwhelm is coming from, is just from how we're perceiving the situations that we're encountering.
I totally agree. And I feel like at the same time, overwhelm tends to come from, I don't know how I'm going to get out of this thing that I need to solve.
Yes.
You know, and our business is always about solving problems. Like, we're solving problems for our clients. We got to solve problems for our employees. We got to solve problems for we're just nonstop solving problems.
Yep.
And so when you don't have a solution to solve a problem, it causes extreme overwhelm. Well, what is the underlying frustration or problem that you need to solve? Well, I need my teams to be aligned. I need to know where we're taking the business, that exit. And I need to dial in, am I trying to fulfill too much stuff? Am I trying to do too many things? And I think that those three things are, they're all part of what we call the orbit analysis, where you're kind of this launch transition strategy of I'm a launching business. No, I'm a growth and scaling business. And this whole roundtable series that we do on this live is to talk about these transition points of stop thinking like a launch guy and start focusing on a growth mindset. And as we start this transition of our own minds, our business will take on that motion, and you start to find yourself growing and scaling, as opposed to just stagnant growth that is working, but it's not awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I love it. Yeah. And that's why I think, like, what you do is so valuable, because you can, all the stuff that I teach people is awesome. And all the stuff that you teach people is awesome. And, like, together, then you're like, all right, there's nothing stopping us now.
Totally agree. It's the person, it's the business. And when you get both of those aligned on the same trajectory, that's where things really start to rock and roll. And I know that you do a lot of things to individually help these business leaders be that mission-driven, very clear and focused leader. But I challenge everyone listening, or who has a chance to hear this thing, take our free assessment at growthreadiness.com, because the free assessment really helps you identify what parts of the way you think of your business are in launch mode and what parts are in growth mode. And we call them growth blockers, because when you're in launch mode, that's about all you're going to see, getting off the ground. When you're in a growth mode, you just go, and you're not, there's not much blocking your ability to scale your business. Take the growthreadiness.com assessment, and you will find that most of you have very simple fixes in your head, and you get someone like Dave to help you adjust the way you think about yourself and your business, and all of a sudden, growth starts to happen.
Absolutely. Love it.
I love it. I think high performance coaching and being growth ready, I think those two things help people from a leadership perspective really dial themselves into a trajectory of growth so much better than trying to bump your head and figure it out all along the way.
Yeah. I mean, we're obviously a little biased here for sure, but I mean, you could go learn anything on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
There's not a shortage of information out there. But the question is, are you? Are you doing that? Are you going? Are you like executing every week? Are you having a conversation with somebody about it and really like diving into it on a deep level?
Agreed.
My guess is like probably not.
I would dare to agree.
Yeah.
And there are some of you who listen to so much content that you never actually take action.
I call this hiding in the learning. It feels good. It feels
Right.
really good to keep learning. Like, oh, I keep learning about this stuff. But then not executing is, yeah, that's the trap.
I love it. I love it. Well, Dave, I love this conversation, and I know that those listening are probably enjoying it as well. Don't hesitate to leave questions, comments in the notes below, because we will be checking our LinkedIns and our YouTubes and replying back to whatever is left here in the comments. But I'm curious about you. What do you guys who are listening to this feel about your own growth readiness and overwhelm? Does this help? Does this help you kind of overcome that feeling of burden you might be feeling right now and trying to run your business? Overwhelm's a really legit thing to feel. I don't know anyone that doesn't feel it during times. What helps you get clear? What helps you wipe away that feeling of overwhelm and turn it into something that you can manipulate into a growth lever? Let us know. Dave, what are your concluding thoughts on this topic? Because I love the way you think about the person driving the business and that whole combination of culture there.
Yeah, I think that if you're just not loving how you feel about things right now, just know that you can change that, and you can do it fairly quickly, and you can create a whole new possibility for yourself, even if it feels like how could I possibly do that? You definitely can. And so if you're curious about that, if you're not stoked about where you're feeling right now, let's just jump on a call and let's chat.
I love it.
And I'd love to just see how I can help you.
I love it. And Dave can be found at unbrokenpursuit.com. And don't, as I mentioned, don't hesitate. Go take a free assessment at growthreadiness.com. This is not an obligation, and we hope that this content has helped you in some way. And if it has, go figure it out. Go dial in your personal issues with Dave. Go figure out your business issues with growth readiness. And I'm telling you right now, the people that have clarity in their focus of where they're going and how they're going to do it and how they're going to align their teams, growth happens. Growth happens fast, and you're not burdened with that flustered feeling of like, I'm not sure what to do next. That overwhelm disappears with clarity.
Love it.
Awesome. Dave, you're the best, man. I appreciate you being on here today with me. And for those listening, please leave us some feedback. Let us know what we did, what you liked, didn't like, and whether you agreed with us or not. We are not perfect in the way we think about things, but I do think that what we've talked about will help.